Hello and welcome into Dialed In. I'm not your everyday host, but instead of my dad, it's me today. All kinds of technical difficulties going on right now inside of either the Brenna-Men household or Chatterbox headquarters. I'm in Bloomington, Indiana. Obviously, you guys know me. I've kind of had a little bit of a hiatus from the show, but extremely fired up to be back. It's Dialed In. We come your way at 9 a.m. on Monday morning and high noon on Thursday. And when I'm left with the show, I need a crutch and somebody to go to. My right-hand man, that is my grandfather, the Hall of Famer Marty Brennaman. He joins us, and today's going to be a big-time Reds show. So, Casey, I know you're here. I'm fired up to be back working with you. But let's bring in Marty. Papa, thank you for joining us. How are you doing? Where are you? What is new in your life?
Well, Luke, you know that all I do is travel with Amanda, and you might catch me tomorrow some other town or some other country. Today we're in Salisbury, North Carolina at our home down here. It's going to be 65 degrees here today. Amanda's just left to go play golf, but I'm giving up that opportunity so I can be with you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. It's a perfect time to have you on, obviously. Instant entertainment, whatever we're talking about on this show when you're one of the guests, but a lot of news involving the Cincinnati Reds as of late. It broke this morning that they were after the young prospect and pretty much I'm not going to say established star, but an established power hitter in Luis Robert Jr. in a failed trade. So I want to jump into that because that broke this morning. Have you read anything about that? And what are your thoughts on a failed trade getting a bunch of pub? Because for me personally, it kind of seems like it didn't happen. I like that the Reds were aggressive. It's adding on to the laundry list of things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. It's like this team is trying to win.
Yeah, they are. And I think, they've done a great job in if they felt like it needed a lot of retooling or fresh faces. They recently made the trade with the San Francisco Giants for a left-hander, Taylor Rogers, who's a young man who's pitched very well out of the bullpen in San Francisco. And I think this guy can help us simply because he's a left-hander. He has experience. And so they're getting more depth in their bullpen. However, the thing that I think is still of some concern, they're not going to come out and say it directly, but at the same time, the mere fact that you see Luis Robert's name mentioned as a possible addition to the club is an indication that they're still trying to trade for or sign a power hitter that can be hammered into the middle of that lineup and hit home runs and drive in runs. I still think that that's the thing that they most deathly need right now. And that may all go away. If they're not able to do that, down the road, if some of these people who come into the club like Christian Encarnacion Strand, who did not play but hardly any at all last year before going out with a season-ending injury and getting Matt McClain back, maybe there are people with this club now that will show the kind of power that will enhance his team's offensive output on a game-by-game basis. But I think this is a better team than the one last year, for a lot of reasons, most notably, of course, the addition of Terry Francona as manager of the club.
Absolutely. I mean, you know better than anyone else. In a small market like this, the way Major League's market is going, it's not going to be you go pay a power hitter $50 million and he cures all your problems, because it's a complete team effort when you're playing the type of small money baseball like the Reds. But you start really looking at the numbers. This is a team that's now spent the 12th most when it comes to dollars, with $132 million in free agency so far. So you pick up Austin Hayes, you bring Wade Miley in on a minor league deal. They got Gavin Lux from the Dodgers. So the rest of those moves, I saw you hint at a power hitting outfielder. That was something that at the start of the offseason, I know a lot of Reds fans had hopes and dreams of talking about Anthony Santander. I know the youngster from the White Sox that fell through today was also a name. Are you satisfied with Austin Hayes? It doesn't sound like it. You still think they need another piece in that lineup, don't you?
Yeah, because I think, Austin Hayes is fine. And he may be the answer. I don't know. But at the same time, you're rolling the dice with him a little bit. I think he hit 22 home runs in 2017 or 18 with the Minnesota Twins, came back with 16 more the next year, but has fallen off to some extent. Maybe he can rediscover his ability to drive the ball out of the ballpark. And certainly, Great American Ballpark, we know what the reputation of that place is as far as the launching pad is concerned. So he may be the answer. But I think the kid from the White Sox, Luis Robert, is a guy that has put up big numbers. And my understanding that deal, at least for the moment, has fallen through because the White Sox could not satisfy the Reds with enough financial money to pay part of his contract to the Reds' satisfaction. That was part of the deal. They were going to pay X number of dollars on the existing contract that he had. It was not as much as the Reds had hoped for, and that's the reason why it fell through. I think it was so close because what I see is that they held off on making the announcement for the kid from the San Francisco Giants. What's his name? Hayes? Austin.
Austin Hayes.
Yeah, they held off on. Yeah, I'm sorry. They held off on that because apparently they were very close to making the deal with the White Sox, and now apparently it's a dead issue unless something else comes out.
Seems like that, especially with it becoming public the way it has,
yes.
is probably in the coffin. So this is the perfect time to bring in finally Thom Brennaman, my dad. Here, Casey, I think we have him ready. Is everything go? There he is.
There he is.
All right, yep. There's our host.
Figured it out on the phone. Thanks for Casey's help, and thanks for your patience. Dad, I'm curious at the end of the day, to me, it all continues to get back to, for the Reds, people make a big deal about their offense. I get it. They didn't hit enough last year. I continue to say and have said for 3 years, the biggest issue for me at the end of the day is they built this incredible depth, very solid depth at starting pitching. But the bottom line is the kid they brought over in the trade who hasn't thrown a pitch for the Reds yet, and Brady Singer, he is the only pitcher, and I'm taking Wade Miley out of the mix. He is the only pitcher that has made 30 starts in a season. So what does that mean? You and I both know what it means. It means that you're only going to increase their workload maybe 10 to 15% to the next year. And as guys like Hunter Green continue to not be able to pitch a full year, Nick Lodolo can't pitch a full year, Abbott can't pitch a full year. You know where I'm going with all of this. Martinez pitched great, but he didn't throw a lot of innings last year. My concern is if you're in the hunt and you get into August and September, that these guys are not going to be able to go to the post for you. Is that a concern of yours?
That's not a great concern of mine, and I'll add to what you're saying, Thom. And I asked Terry Francona when I was with him last week. I said, is there going to be an increased emphasis from your part and from the pitching department's part to see that these guys understand that they simply have to give this club more innings when they go out to pitch than what David Bell was satisfied with when he managed the club? And we all know that this bullpen has been worked as hard or harder than any bullpen in the National League over the last few years simply because they were satisfied with 5 innings. I don't think they can continue to harbor the hope that they're going to be successful and they're going to be a major player in a very winnable National League Central Division unless they can get more innings on a start-by-start basis with this rotation. Now, I think they're very deep as far as the rotation. The people you named are all viable, but they've got other people that probably will be pitching down in Louisville who have had some major league experience. And I think they're going to bend over backwards to guard against just what you talked about a moment ago, to eliminate the possibility that going into the last 5 weeks of the season or whatever the case might be, these guys are all of a sudden that they've shot their wad, they're done.
Luke?
I think it's interesting the idea of the Reds being 12th in the MLB when it comes to 132 million. We skipped over that. I introed a question with it, but Dad, you weren't here from that. I know you had some thoughts. Is that good to see? I know a lot of Cincinnati fans are fired up about that. I know the Castellinis did an interview the other day, and they said, hey, as long as we have Ellie De La Cruz and a base in Cincinnati, a superstar, this is a whole other talking point to bring up, is his longevity and future as a Red. Is the go time now? Because I feel like we always talk about these 50% rebuilds that immediately jolt into people expecting the Reds to make the playoffs. But like Marty just referred to, this is a pitching rotation that is 6 deep when it comes to MLB starters. And there are still some guys that are hungry to be a part of the rotation on the outside looking in. And with some now bullpen help with Taylor Rogers, if this lineup can just improve, say, 15, 20 ticks hitting for average as a group, you might have a team that's competing for the National League Central.
Thom?
Well, I mean, look, I know I just said it, but I mean, I think it's worth repeating. And Terry Francona can say what he wants to say, and I have incredible respect. He's forgotten more about baseball than I'll ever know. But look, Singer was the only guy to throw 200 innings last year that they have on the entire starting rotation. He's the only one. And we know that all of these franchises have bought into the notion that really was created by Tom Verducci after years of study on this stuff. So I just don't see Hunter Green going from 180 to 220. I don't see Nick Lodolo, who basically might be lucky to get to 110 innings pitched this year. He hasn't pitched in 3 years for all intents and purposes. So I'm not trying to be negative about it in any way. I think their offense has a chance to be a lot better. They clearly are banking on a return to form of guys like McLean, healthy again, good Lord willing, Encarnacion Strand, better than he was last year when he was clearly hurt. There's no doubt he's a better hitter than what he's shown. Marte, all of last winter's drama behind him, and now can focus on this season. So I think the offense has a chance to be significantly better. I just continue to get back to the fact, and I think it's why you're seeing them beef up this bullpen. I thought the Ian Gibaut, bringing him back was an excellent sign. He pitched really well for this team 2 years ago. The Rogers trade, you've got some other guys down there who pitch well for you. I just get concerned that if you're truly going to be in the hunt, are the starters going to be there for you when you arguably need them, Dad, the most?
Well, you know what, Thom? I think you have to cross that bridge when you come to it.
Yeah.
Because to sit here and talk about this is not going to make it better. It's not going to make it worse. And I think whatever plan that Derek Johnson and Francona have in terms of trying to extend these guys, not only on a start-by-start basis, but also into the last month or so of the season to keep them healthy, I think they will come up with some type of solution that they hope will work. I know exactly what you're saying, and it's interesting you mentioned Lodolo. They really feel like he may be the key to this whole thing because there is no question at all that when he's healthy, he is as good as any pitcher on this staff and one of the better pitchers in the National League. I mean, that's when they signed him, when they brought him to the big leagues, I said then he's a better pitcher than Hunter Green. He's a better big league starter potentially than anybody they've got. Now, the key for him is to obviously stay healthy. And whatever he did in the offseason, we have no idea to try and minimize the possibility of the injury situation rearing its ugly head again this season. But I'm still confident that this club is going to be able to sustain its pitching effectiveness over the course of a full year because they've got people now that are going to look at this whole situation in an entirely different light from the way it's been the last 3 or 4 years.
All right, Luke, do you have anything else? Go ahead, buddy.
I just got one more thing for Papa before we let you go. Is it fair to say now that we bring you on this show? There's north of 100 people in the chat. We're having conversations of the Reds pitching into the postseason. Nick Kroll and company have now done their job, right? I mean, for all intents and purposes, Gavin Lux could hit for 2 hits and 5,000 at bats next year, and we're going to say he's the worst GM ever and made the worst moves. But for the sake of the front office and ownership, bringing in and creating the buzz that is now in Cincinnati for the Reds, for the time being, Cincinnati Reds fans are satisfied. Is that fair to say or no? Is there excitement in baseball in Cincinnati right now?
I think the optimism is higher than it's been for a long, long time. But let me tell you, with all due respect to the changes they've made, with all due respect to people they brought in and those who are no longer here, the energy automatically went through the roof when they announced that Terry Francona had been hired to manage this club. Now, the thing I worry about is that people thinking, well, you've got the second coming here now, so the team we have is good enough to win the World Series. Well, I think they're putting too much pressure on the ability of the manager, who can't go up there and swing the bat every time somebody goes to the plate or throw every pitch from the mound, whatever the case might be. So I think they've added guys that can help them, potentially help them. I think the kid from the Dodgers, Lux, is a kid that probably will blossom in a different atmosphere and away from the Dodgers. I thought that was a great addition to this organization. So I just said, let's tee it up on March 27th against whoever it is they open against, the Giants, whoever it is,
yep.
and go out and play the game in a very winnable division. There's nobody in this division that's going to run away and hide. The Cardinals are in a rebuilding mode. People are raising hell in St. Louis over what's going on there. Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh. We saw them break out of the gate better than any team in the National League last year, and we all felt that sooner or later they're going to realize they wear a Pirates uniform and they're going to go south, and that's what they did. Milwaukee, I cannot believe that they can be as good as they were last year, losing what they've lost. The Cubs probably have improved themselves, but I think the Reds can win this division if, and this is the commonality in the sport, if they can stay healthy, especially in their pitching staff. If they can keep those guys healthy, I think they can be in this hunt all season long.
All right. Now Luke had one last question. I want to hit on two topics very quickly and just get your opinion on them. Are the NFL referees in the bag for the Kansas City Chiefs? Yay or nay?
I'd hate to say yes on that. That's as harsh as there can be. I will say that it seems like there are more plays that have been publicized in a game-breaking situation or a game-changing situation. More often than not, those calls have gone in their favor. Now, whether or not that's something that needs to be looked at by the people that in charge of the National Football League, I don't know.
Okay, last question. The last 2 weekends, I was in
I knew you were going here.
At your alma mater. And look, I had the game against Stanford where they get beat at the buzzer. I had one of the most incredible sporting events I've ever had a chance to broadcast in my life, and I mean that. That game last weekend against Boston College, 102-96 in overtime, was fantastic. But since then, Carolina's lost to Pitt. Your thoughts, the state of North Carolina basketball, before we let you go.
Right now, to me, it's as bad as it's been since Matt Doherty coached his team back in the turn of the century. And he didn't last, I don't think, 3 years. But he recruited a class the last time he was there that Roy Williams ultimately won a national championship with. As an objective observer, and I don't drink the Kool-Aid like most of those people down there do, or they do at the University of Kentucky. I just see a team that has no direction offensively. It's a one-on-one game with their guards, and all of whom are very talented. They have zero presence in the middle, none. And all the portal players that Hubert Davis brought in after last year, none of them have been contributors. I mean, especially the number one was this kid, Kate Tyson, who came out of Belmont shooting 40-some% from threes, and he's now so deep at the end of the bench they got to pump daylight to him. I think this franchise, this program is in a bad way. I think they're going to probably lose 15 games this year. I think Pitt will get them again. Maybe Carolina can close them out at the end, which they've not been able to do all year against anybody. I think Duke will have their way with them in both games because they have nobody to play Cooper Flagg. They have 0 people to play Cooper Flagg, who's the best player in the conference. I think the program is in a very, very bad state, and I don't know what it's going to mean in terms of the future for Hubert Davis. I saw a piece written by a very talented writer down there this morning in The Athletic, Brendan Marks, who's an outstanding basketball writer, and he's covered Carolina, I think, for a number of years. He mentioned the possibility that Davis could even retire at the end of the season. So we'll see what happens, but I'm not very optimistic about the direction this team is going in, nor am I enthusiastic about next year, because I think you've got some of these players who people assume are going to be there next year. They're going to walk at the end of the year. I think there's a possibility Elliot Cadeau can walk. I think Ian Jackson's going to go to the NBA. Drake Powell, he's a possibility of walking. Seth Trimble could walk. They could be in a bad way. They're all excited about, signing Caleb Wilson, who's one of the top 5 players in the country coming out of high school. But if he's got nobody to play with, and I think they've got to be concerned about, are these kids going to stay in school and play around him to make them a better team in 2026? I don't know.
All right. Well, we knew we'd get the state of the state for North Carolina from you, Dad. And so we thank you for your time today.
I'm glad you got your equipment straightened out. Luke, it's always a pleasure seeing your smiling face, son. And I hope we can do this. This reunion this morning has been energizing to your 82-year-old grandpa.
I love it. I think that we should do it every single week, and I think that's something that we got to start getting in the works.
I'm up for it.
I think the chat would love to see you more.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yep. Dad, have a great day. We love you.
Thank you,
we love you too, man. See you guys.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that's the Brenna-Men, if you will. All right, Luke, we got other things to get into today. You were kind enough to, really spend a lot of time, and you've been nonstop with everything you've got going on in and around school. I want to get to the Bengals. Duke Tobin made some comments with Kelsey Conway, who covers the team for Cincinnati.com down at the Senior Bowl. And he was asked about, where are you in terms of contracts? With Jamar Chase, he says, look, it's a priority. We clearly want to get it done. He was asked about Trey Hendrickson, and he said, look, we want to reward him for the player he has been, arguably the greatest free agent signee in the history of the Bengals franchise. 4 years here, 4 years a Pro Bowl player, led the league in sacks this year. He's 30 years old. He's making $20 million a year. That's compared to guys like Bosa, among others, who are making $34 million a year. Tobin said, look, it takes 2 to tango. We would like to sign him, but again, it takes 2 sides. Those were his words, not mine. The T. Higgins thing, he made reference to, hey, look, we'd like to get that guy here too. But what I want to get into is the NFL has always been a copycat league. And Luke, you and I were talking about this the other day, okay? Let's look at the 2 best dynasties in recent memory. The New England Patriots with Belichick and Brady, okay? And Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs with Andy Reid. Okay, now, I think there is a lot to be said about the coaching there. Okay, so, you put that on the back burner for a second, though. But if it is a copycat league, let's take a look at what the Bengals are thinking about doing, as opposed to what those 2 franchises did for the long haul and sustained success with not only 1 Super Bowl title, but multiple Super Bowl titles. Okay? Randy Moss only played, and he's the only Hall of Famer unless you think Wes Welker has a chance, which maybe he does. But he's the only Hall of Fame wide receiver that ever played with Tom Brady in all his years in New England. He did have a future Hall of Famer in tight end Rob Gronkowski. I don't know if Tyreek Hill is going to be a Hall of Famer, but he is by far and away the best receiver that Patrick Mahomes has ever had. We do know he has had a Hall of Fame tight end in Travis Kelce. So, highly paid quarterback, generational quarterback, both of them. Bengals have that. They've not overpaid for a receiver. Bengals are talking about paying not only one of them, they're talking about paying two. They both had Hall of Fame tight ends. Bengals have never had one of those. And they both had excellent defenses, if not great defenses. Do you believe, Luke, that this plan the Bengals could be embarking on, could be, okay, by signing Higgins and to do at least comparing it with people that have had success?
It's really hard to say because you have to acknowledge the fact that an organization that is on the brink of doing something like Kansas City is, of winning 3 consecutive Super Bowls that's never been done in NFL history, it is not execution on every level. It is perfection on every level. They hold on to Tyreek Hill. They hold on. They hold on. They hold on. They let him go. They're back in the Super Bowl. Defensively, someone falls off, the next man up is just as good. That is coaching. So I know we want to put it on the back burner, but that's player development, that's drafting, that is making all the right moves at the right times. So it makes you terrified as a Bengals fan because for us, it's like, oh, Trey Hendrickson, he's given Cincinnati 4 insane years. But Trey Hendrickson has numbers where Trey Hendrickson is deserved to be paid massive amounts of money. Jamar Chase, the same thing. So Joe and Jamar, those two are going to stick together. Let's move on. Hendrickson's interesting, though, because it's like, for all of us in Cincinnati, that guy plays for the badge. He plays for the city. We want to see Trey Hendrickson get paid a Brinks truck for the sake of you deserved it, you earned it, have it. But at the same time, it's like, if you're an organization, you start paying guys because it's like, oh, he's been great to us. He was a great signee 4 years ago. We got to pay him because he deserves that money from the Cincinnati Bengals. The Chiefs don't care about that. The Chiefs don't care about Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs are saying, we just want to win. Oh, we got Rashee Rice coming in. See it, Tyreek. It was sweet knowing you go down to Miami and hate your life down there like he does. So Tyreek Hill, it was like, I want the money, but then once he got the money in Miami, he suddenly wants chances to play in the playoffs. You can't have the best of both worlds, and that's the same for the front office. You can have Trey Hendrickson back in a Bengals uniform, but you might have another bummy secondary or another terrible pass rush around the guy. So next thing you know, Trey Hendrickson nicks his ankle in week 2, and it's like, well, we spent $150 million on 4 guys because they deserved it. There's a difference between deserving money and money being the right thing. I don't make enough money to tell you where everything should go to turn the Bengals into the next Chiefs or New England Patriots, but it is a very fair point that out of any other league in sports, the NFL is the most copycat, proven success league. If you do things similar to other teams, that there is a way to win in the NFL, at least consistently. And that's what the Patriots did, and the Chiefs are doing the same thing, and nobody's talking about how good of the coaching staff the Chiefs are. I mean, biggest third down of the year. Patrick Mahomes didn't make that play. That play was made on the spreadsheet in Andy Reid's office, probably at midnight on Monday that week. I mean, it's Samaje. That guy's your age, Dad. So it's execution on every single level of that organization, and that's what needs to go unnoticed. They're that good that they get all the calls. It's like LeBron James. He goes to the free throw line 25 times a game in the postseason because he's that good. And there's a difference between drawing a foul and getting calls. But for the Chiefs' perspective, they played good enough defense where they're suddenly not flagged. And offensively, they can draw penalties, they get penalties, and they get first downs when they need it. That's what it comes down to, not superstar one-handed catches and whatnot. So it's a tough.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with a key word, development. And that's where those other 2 franchises, especially Kansas City, that's where they have just been fantastic. Now, will we see more of that with a new offensive line coach, with a new defensive line coach, with a new defensive coordinator? Because the Bengals have drafted and put a lot of draft equity in drafting defensive players in recent years. And let's be honest about it. There's not one of them. Now, Logan Wilson's had a nice run at it. Jermaine Pratt has had a nice run at it. I think that ship has sailed maybe with both of those guys. But that's neither here nor there. But when you look at the rest of the guys they have drafted, look, free agents Mike Hilton and Awuzie were the two, and throw in Von Bell the first go round when he signed here. Those are the three best secondary players that they have had here in the last 4 or 5 years. Not one of those guys was drafted by the Bengals. Not one. So, whether you're talking about the DJ Turners, the Cam Taylor Britts, right on down the line. And Casey, I know you're into this, and I want to bring you in very quickly before we get to some basketball stuff, because I definitely want to talk about UC and Xavier a little bit. Because speaking of coaching, I mean, we are seeing a clinic being done by one, and I don't know what in the world is going on with the other. But Casey, look, I mean, are we so wrapped up in what Joe Burrow says about T. Higgins? Are we so wrapped up that we like T. Higgins as a human being? And I've been the first to say all along, nobody likes T. Higgins on the planet more than I do. I think he's a wonderful kid. I think he's a great example of a way that your son could grow up to be like as a young man. I love his mom. But I'm saying, are we too wrapped up in this star thing to look at things realistically and objectively about who you want wearing the uniform here next year?
Yeah, I mean, we've been over this topic a couple different times, and I've flip-flopped on my stance on this a few times, but I'm somewhere now in the middle to where it makes sense if they can get the right number for T. Higgins, and it makes no sense if it's 30 million plus, which he's probably going to fall somewhere between 28 to 30. If you just look at the receivers in that range, you're talking about Jalen Waddle, who's a number 2, Devontae Smith, a number 2. And those guys, to me, make a lot of sense for T. Higgins to make 28. And maybe that doesn't make a ton of sense with the current structure of the roster, but they have moves that they can make that could make sense. They could cut Alex Kappa. They could cut Sheldon Rankins. They could cut Sam Hubbard. And that's your 20-something million right there. So it makes sense to look at it from that perspective, that they have moves that they can make that would be tough moves to make. It would be tough to cut Sam Hubbard, who's been a captain on this team for a while. It'd be tough to
That's
cut
not
Alex
hard to
Kappa.
do. That's not hard to do. That's not hard to do. Forget the emotion. That's an easy move. Both of those moves are easy moves.
Okay, well, if that being said, if it's that easy, then I think it makes clear sense to keep T. Higgins around, right? You have that much money available just from those three alone, not to mention the guys that are kind of toss-ups like Zach Moss, Jermaine Pratt, Geno Stone, right? Those guys are also on the cut block too, and that you can kind of like go, I could keep them one way or the other. At some point, though, like you said, this roster is so damaged right now. It is so uncertain of itself. There's about 10 different positions on defense, maybe even all positions on defense that are not solidified. And I'm including guys like Trey Hendrickson and Logan Wilson in that conversation because Logan Wilson, again, gets hurt, and he's about average as a linebacker this year. Not great. Trey Hendrickson, if you don't extend him, he probably doesn't want to play here. He's probably going to hold out. So you have really tough decisions to make as the Bengals. I just don't feel like T. Higgins, to me, that's a drop in the pan for what they have left to build with, right? And the thing that we talk about with Kansas City and their development too, the Bengals did exactly what Kansas City did. They went out and solidified their offensive line. They tried to pick young defensive players, and it just didn't work out. Yeah, I don't like to sit here and say they didn't try exactly what the Chiefs did because they didn't trade T. Higgins away, or they didn't the Tyreek Hill thing. I don't feel like that's the same because they were able to function past that Super Bowl window with a different type of offense. The Bengals have not shown that they can function with a different type of offense, and on top of that, their offensive line is starting to regress and fall apart again. So they're in a bit of a different situation than Kansas City. I don't think it's smart to trade away star players on your team at all, period, if you're the Bengals, because you don't keep them anyways. Like, you let Jesse Bates walk, you let DJ Reader walk. I'm just tired of that mold. I'm tired of letting talent walk out the door for unknowns or for pennies on the dollar. So that's where I'm at with T. Higgins. I think it makes sense to extend him. I think there's a lot of cut casualties. And
Well, look, the bottom line is when you talk cut casualties, you still have to replace those players. I mean, we can sit around and talk about 9 guys, and you cut 9 guys, and now you can pay for T. Yeah, well, who's replacing the 9 guys? I mean, Hubbard didn't do much, but he's got to be replaced with somebody better. That's going to cost you some money because it doesn't look like, unless all of a sudden they start developing guys like Miles Murphy, been here 2 years now, hadn't done anything. We had guys like.
Oh, we lost him.
Oh, there he goes. The technical issues continue.
You got guys hanging around. Yeah, you got guys hanging around here who have done nothing for years and years and years. And now all of a sudden, okay, you say, let's cut Logan Wilson. Let's cut Jermaine Pratt. Let's cut Hubbard. Let's cut Kappa. Let's cut Geno Stone. That's fine. You want to cut all those guys? Cut them. But the bottom line is you have to replace them. I don't know how anybody in their right mind can justify paying T. Higgins the kind of money they're talking about paying him, not only because of the deficiencies in other areas of the team, Luke, but the fact that Higgins missed 5 games last year. He missed 5 games the year before. He has had the same injuries, hamstring, quad, over and over and over again. So I just don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, it takes you back to what I said at the start of the show, or at the start of the segment. Bengals fans are so in deep because of our unbelievably unwavering faith to this team that because T has done so much for Cincinnati and so much for us when he's made big catches and played huge games, we feel he deserves and has to be a Bengal. This is a business. Guys, I don't feel bad if the Bengals don't pay Trey Hendrickson $30 million. I don't feel bad for the guy. Oh, God forbid, he now has to go to Miami and play football. Like, let's be realistic here and kind of look at this full circle. I know we're a small market. We love our players. It's a tight-knit city, and they're happy to be here when we're playing good football. But when push comes to shove, we don't care if T. Higgins is happy. We care if the Bengals are winning football games because then everybody's happy. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. Secondly, the T. Higgins stats are interesting to look at because the Bengals do win when T. Higgins is healthy and playing.
Yes.
So, brings me to, we wanted to talk about the Chiefs. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. What did they do? They drafted a defensive line that can get to any quarterback in this league. They go out and draft that corner from Iowa, Cooper DeJean. Not only is he on their special teams unit, he plays every single snap. He can play the safety position. That is just all. I mean, that's what you have to do in the National Football League if you want to make it to the Super Bowl. You have to load up on your A.J. Browns, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley's, and then you have to develop everyone else. Defenses in the NFL, Reed Mouse just said it. They're getting smaller, they're getting faster, they're getting quicker, and they're getting less money. It's kind of a plug-and-place thing. Hey, we're going to do you for a year. So if we don't pay T. Higgins $25 million, I sure as hell don't want to see $3 million go to Geno Stone, $2 million go to a mid-tier corner, $4 million go to not a good edge rusher, but like hey, maybe he'll get 4 or 5 sacks this season. Because that's a nightmare situation in the NFL when you try and perfect every single position and you have no explosive dominant players. No, you need the Trey Hendricksons. You need the guys like Jamar Chase that no one can guard. But how much is too much, and where are you filling the holes with what pieces of the puzzle? That's what makes the front office so interesting and honestly entertaining in the NFL to look at who's good and who's not. Because when the Bengals won the AFC Championship in Kansas City, I'm sure the rest of the world was looking at the screen like the biggest play of that game was made by Eli Apple. Von Bell had a pick in overtime that ended up leading. A rookie kicker that the Bengals used a draft pick on that people were like, what the heck are they doing? Ended up being a top 3 catalyst of back-to-back postseason runs. So whether it's luck, development, you have to have a lot of things go your way, and there certainly isn't a right answer every single time. The T. Higgins situation is going to be something that we're talking about on this podcast when I'm 25, though, if he gets paid a ton of money, or if he doesn't and goes to New England and turns into the next coming of Jamar Chase.
Okay. All right. We'll table this for another day, and we have all off season to talk about this. Last thing I want to get to is, and look, we did not talk. Development was a big part of it, but I don't see play calls from Zach Taylor. Is any Andy Reid? And that's a fair question. But I think coaching is a big part of this whole thing. I really, really do. And we'll find out as to be fair, Zach is still a very young man and he has time to grow. Let's not forget. And I was talking with an Eagles fan about this the other day on the plane. Huge Eagles fan. I said, hey, you guys ran Andy Reid out of town. I was there doing games, Philadelphia games, when they ran him out of town. And they did, because he never won the Super Bowl. So, sometimes guys have to grow to get better. That's fair. Okay, but now it brings me to coaching in college basketball. Now, I mentioned Xavier lost their game last night against Creighton on the road. Tough place to play. Xavier has been on quite a run here. And in most of the latest bracketology kind of things, Xavier is sitting right on that bubble. They are right on it. Yeah, they've played better lately. Yeah, they've beaten UConn. Yeah, they've beaten Marquette. But they're still 13-9. And so they're right on that line. The University of Cincinnati 5 weeks ago was ranked in the top 17 teams in the country. They had wins over, you thought it was a good win against Dayton early in the year. They finally ended the jinx against Xavier. They didn't play a big powerhouse out of conference schedule. And quite frankly, I don't blame them for that because of their league. I really don't. But that's another discussion. But when you look at what has happened here recently, does it not make you wonder about the difference between Sean Miller and Wes Miller? Now, their resumes are night and day. They can't be compared. We know that. Okay, Sean Miller tore it up wherever he's been. First time at Xavier, was great at Arizona, didn't win the championship, got into some, whatever happened out there, it happened. They bring him back. And look, there were a lot of people upset with him early in the year. And I am never going to call for somebody to be fired. I will never, ever, ever, ever do it. But here's what I can say. I called the University of Cincinnati games when Bob Huggins was there. And I don't like living in the past. But from Bob Huggins to Mick Cronin, even to John Brannon, the University of Cincinnati was never out-rebounded in 7 straight basketball games. The two things UC could hang its hat on in the history of this program, going all the way back to the Ed Jucker days, is they were tough, they were physical, they were going to fight, they were going to defend, and they were going to rebound. And now they've gone 7 straight games getting out-rebounded, and their defense and offense have been brutal. Luke, what to do with the UC Bearcats?
No, it's really tough, and it's interesting from a perspective like mine where I go to Indiana. So now we're talking about a whole different level of basketball religion here, and I've been covering the team actually the past 2 weeks for this project I've been working on. This is a place that has all of the resources. It has all of the reasons. It has all of the alumni to get players to want to come to play here, to play here, and it's the same issue. They hit the transfer portal. UC is a lot better, more of like recruiting and developing with some of the guys they have now. But Indiana hits the portal, and we're catching our $1 million center, Umar Balu, at the upstairs pub at 1 in the morning the night before a game. That's a different level of an issue than getting out hustled on the glass or getting out worked. The thing that's so weird about the Cincinnati thing is, yeah, they're in 15th in the Big 12. Is this really what you guys wanted, Bearcats fans? Joining this power conference and you get your brains kicked in football, and now hoops is what you're going to go to, and you're going to compete in this league, and you're losing to Utah. So it's tough to listen to Wes Miller say the things he says about, I'm pissed off. We're a tough team. These kids are going to play hard every single time. There's a difference between being tough and acting tough and preaching tough. Because the real tough guys and the toughest as they come, they play because they're worried that they're not playing hard enough. It's always, what can I do more? And that's those types of players that have come through Cincinnati and developed Cincinnati into the school, or at least basketball program that it is now. And that culture, it feels like it's still verbally there every single time we tune into a game or press conference or interview, but it's definitely not there on the floor. Now, I'll say this. The answer, and I'm confident about this one, is you don't fire Wes Miller. That buyout is an issue on its own, and the bigger issue is who's going to come to the University of Cincinnati, who's in 15th place in the Big 12 Conference, and recruit McDonald's All-Americans? You can say the same thing about Mike Woodson here, but I think it's a whole different animal because Indiana is Indiana, and the second Cincinnati falls all the way to the bottom of the Big 12, yes, it's a basketball school. Yes, they have good history. But they don't have the campus that Indiana has. They don't have the history that Indiana has. So you're competing with that type of school for recruits. And if Wes Miller's still getting those types of guys, that, hey, I'm going to trust him for a little bit longer. And if it goes down as the worst half-decade or decade run or misery or a mistake of a hire, then blame the athletic director and call me out on Twitter. But I really don't think the answer would be firing him.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All right, fellas, before we get out of here, we got about 3 minutes left. What's the move for the weekend? Casey, we begin with you.
Ooh, move for the weekend. This weekend, I'm going to be celebrating my wife's birthday. And
Beautiful.
I might as well take the time to say happy early birthday. We're going to do something special over the weekend. And we're also going to spend time with her family. But yeah, other than that, I don't have much else planned. That's going to be my whole focus. Thom, Luke, what about you guys?
Okay, that is her first birthday as a pregnant, soon-to-be delivering child woman.
That's right.
So happy birthday, Alexandra. All right, Luke, what's the move?
Not really much. Indiana plays Purdue tomorrow night, so massive rivalry game. That's kind of exciting. When you went into this year for Indiana Hoops as a top 20 team spending $2.5 million in the transfer portal, you would think we would hope to at least be not 20-point underdogs is what it feels like tomorrow. But Indiana-Purdue, that's what it's all about here. You know, the football team was great. I covered it. But this is a basketball school. This is a basketball state. And a rivalry like that one, we're all going to be tuned in this house watching the game with my buddies tomorrow night. Not much going on over the weekend. I'm a football guy through and through. So a little bit of that hangover week depression, especially thinking about the week after next week. Like, what the heck am I going to do on the weekends? So I guess the start of trying to figure that out. I have to figure out life without football, and I need to do it fast because typically I sit on my butt for like 3 weekends in a row just wishing football was on, when in reality we're waiting until next fall.
All right. Move for me is I'm headed down to Georgia Tech for the weekend for our CW basketball telecast, and it's Georgia Tech against Louisville. Now, a couple of people, even before I brought this up, Steve Ross, wish UC had hired Pat Kelsey. Pat Kelsey is in year 1 at Louisville. They have 11 transfers. The only returning player off that Louisville team from last year is a fifth-year walk-on. Of the 11 new players that they have, 80% of those players played in the NCAA tournament for their prior school last year. They have won 10 straight games. They have not lost since December the 14th when they got beat by Kentucky. They lost their 2 best players on the team the week before the season started. And yet, here they are. So I can't wait to see Pat Kelsey. I've always loved that dude. Great guy. West Side guy. Was a LaSalle guy, transferred to Elder. Skip Prosser guy. Was his right-hand man, the late, great Skip Prosser, for many, many years. So I can't wait to see Pat Kelsey and the Louisville Cardinals, or as they say down there, the Louisville Cardinals. All right. Lukey, have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend. Casey, you do the same.
Yep, you too, Thom.
Thank you.
Luke,
Thanks for
all
everyone
right,
tuned in. We
buddy.
had
Great show
numbers
today. Yeah, great numbers today. We thank everybody in the chat who was with us today, the thousands. And it's right, Steve. Louisville had won, I think it's a total of 12 games the last 2 years. 12 games the last 2 years. And now they are 16-5, winners of 10 straight. All right, guys, thanks to all. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll look forward to catching up with you on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Have a great day.